introduce the moderator for this panel discussion, Mr. Dhananjay, Naithani, Associate Partner, Sapphire Human Solutions. Thank you so very much for joining us. And I'd also like to introduce to you our panelists. Like I mentioned, we have with us Dr. Vikas, Vats Chairman, HR Association India, who will continue to be a part of the panel discussion. Let me also welcome Ms. Lopamudra Banerjee, Deputy Director, HR Southeast Asia and Head HR Career Media India. A warm welcome to Ms. Sonal Kapur Sinha, Head of Human Resources, Modern Food. So I'd like to once again welcome Ms. Sonal Kapur Sinha. I'd also like to extend a warm welcome to Srees PP, Head HR, Essilor South Asia. And we have regrets from Mr. Radhakrishna, GV, HR Director, Advanta. Due to a personal emergency, he's unable to join the panel discussion, but pays his regards to all of you all. Over to our moderator.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, first of all, Dr. Vikas, for giving us a different paradigm today. It took us only 1,000 years ago, but so relevant what was happening then and what is happening today and what is going to be happening tomorrow. I'm extremely blessed and feeling honored to be here today with an elite panel. Now, they are leaders who have been transforming workplaces, who have been transforming businesses, wherever they have worked with their robust HR strategies. And that's the reason why they are where they are today. And feeling very excited to be a part of this session. First of all, I want to thank this elite panel for agreeing to be here with us for the next 1 hour, and pearls of wisdom is going to flow in the next 1 hour. On behalf of Sapphire, I thank you all. Lopamudra, thank you so much. Srees, Sonal, Dr. Vikas, thank you so much for being with us here today. We are definitely going to miss Dr. Radhakrishna as well. A big thank you to our delegates who are here with us today. In the enriching discussion that we're going to have, they can also have the opportunity to punch in their questions in the chat box, and we will see at the end of the session how best we can manage to answer those questions with a galaxy of stars that we have today here. Before we actually deep dive into this session, friends, I had a couple of things in my mind where I would want you to share your initial thoughts, all of you. Now, L&D function as an engine has a multi-dimension impact. You talk about upskilling the workforce for making the organization future ready. You talk about attracting and retaining talent, that is one dimension. You talk about positive employee engagement and boosting human productivity. That's another dimension altogether. Now, the stakes are too high with this function and the engine that has to function seamlessly with each organization. Having said that, what's your initial thought on too many things that are attached with the L&D today? Lopamudra, if we can hear your thoughts here.
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. Yes, you're right, Dhananjay. I think there are lots of dimensions to the function, but as I see it, I think the main function, the main tenet, the core of the L&D function to me is business partnership. And I think that in the corporate world, learning is not just about, skills, knowledge. That's one aspect of it. But I think more importantly, the applicability of that skill and knowledge is something which creates, that impact. And I think L&D can play a very core role around that how is it that, behaviors are changing, and therefore, how are things changing, and how is the L&D function creating value to the organization? So while the L&D function has to be strategically aligned to the goals of the organization, I think they also need to sort of look at internal systems, people, processes, how they are aligned to one another, and how sort of, they are working with each other. And I think it's a function that can really do well, when they optimize the relationship with the business customers. I think L&D is one such function where, while it's deeply integrated into the business and the core of the business tenet, can also kind of step outside a little bit and in an unbiased view, take a short-term and a long-term perspective in terms of, how that whole learning journey needs to blend with the organization. Having said all that, I think contextual factors like, a collaborative, open-minded work environment that promotes this culture is also very important. So that's my 2 bits on this.
No, absolutely, absolutely. And you mentioned a very important aspect of culture, which probably we get a chance to discuss that today, because the culture fabric is one of the differentiators in organizations if they want to achieve business outcomes. Srees, your thoughts?
Good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, I would strongly agree with Lopamudra, the way she described the L&D function. And when you look at culture, the cultural aspect of an organization comes from the core. And this core comes basically from the mission. And when I look back at my organization and I look at my mission and how it blends with our culture, is we talk about improving lives by improving sight. And because of which all aspects of what we do is related to this, this mission, and this builds our culture. And for us, it is like a family. And this is what really helps us in really, building the teams, creating the collaborative culture with the same mission with the one mission of providing the eyesight to the employees. Now, if you look at this aspect of, culture building and how it enhances the learning, is whatever we do is, in terms of our development of our people, development of our products, how we synergize in our business is linked. And this really helps us in, joining the dots and making the organization much more stronger, much more vibrant. And the skills, what we talk of, is much beyond the product. It is all about helping each other reach our common goal of, enabling people to have a better eyesight.
Absolutely. You used a very sensitive term, eyesight, which is so synonymous with your business. I think that's very well put across. And fortunately, we have global leaders on the forum today who are handling very complex ecosystems in terms of the number of entities and the number of countries that come under you directly. And whilst you were talking, Srees, I also got an insight in terms of a question in my mind, which I'm parking it for the moment, but I'll come back to you for that. It'll be wonderful to hear from you on those. Just to clarify, my own thinking. It'll be wonderful to be guided by you on that aspect. Yeah. Thank you, Srees. Sonal, nice to have you with us here today, and your thoughts.
Thank you so much, Dhananjay. Thank you so much for the context, everyone, and your views. And obviously, we can't be too distanced in how we feel. However, I just wanted to add, a dimension and a way of viewing in how I have been seeing it this year, and especially with the entire pandemic, year that we've had. To me, the employee experience, kind of stands at the forefront of whatever we as HR or as organizations are thinking of doing. So, on one hand, of course, the reason that we are talking of skilling and upskilling is because it's going to be beneficial to our business and the profitability thereof. But what I am proponent of is that we need to have a learner-centered approach. So of course, the people who are working with us, the employees themselves, do believe they have a skill gap. They do understand that they need to work towards it. But they are also viewing it as an experience, that they have from the organization. It's like a part of the signature experience that the organization will give them. So we have to remember that the learner is the pivot center as far as skilling is concerned. If they are not working with me, my investment will only go spiraling down. And of course, the second elemental part of the learning space for me is the manager. I, as an HR and L&D function, can do everything in, bringing the horse to the water well. But after that, it is the learner and the manager who have to, collaborate together, picking up words from both Lopamudra and Srees, and then ensure that my investment is reaping benefit. So, I will do everything to make it, blended. I will do customization. I can do everything from what I can. But till my learner says, yes, I agree with you. Yes, I'm going to walk this line, and this is what I want to learn. I think, I'm not going to be doing very well. So for me, I propose that, we look at it from an employee experience and a learner-centered approach to just make it more effective. My two bits on that.
Beautiful. I think one line caught my attention, Sonal, about taking the horse to the pool. I think this is one thing that we L&D professionals have been talking to each other about it. And because you mentioned that point, I had a question for Dr. Vats. Also, what he mentioned at the start of our conversation. Dr. Vats, what Sonal just mentioned about taking the horse to the pool. What do you think? How is the L&D function coping up with the recent challenges in 2020, especially post-pandemic, to imbibe learning interventions? Especially we've been talking about ROI for a very long time to stake and claim a place for L&D in organizations today. So just want to hear your thoughts on that.
So starting from where Sonal ended, that we need to shift from pedagogy to andragogy. So that is what we have found, right? So we have been using the pedagogy approaches, whatever the tools we used to teach the kids. So now for adults, everything works differently. So when we talk about learner-centric approach, that is actually andragogy. So there are so many things which are involved. There are 7 different principles. So once we incorporate them, then actually people want to invest in themselves. So one of them, for example, the principle is they need to know what's in for me. So unless, I don't know, when I was in 10th or 12th class, I studied trigonometry. I never knew why I studied that. Unless 10 years, 15 years back, I started learning C++ language, and under a project, I wanted to program solar eclipse. So the sun has to move around Earth, and this system has to move around sun. So then I used trigonometry, and I actually understood after 12, 15 years, what's the purpose of studying sine theta and cos theta. If I knew that time, I would have done better. So that was andragogy, right? What happened later on. So once we have adult learning principles, and another is in L&D, a major tool is training. So we call it should be enter-training. So adults learn differently than kids. So once we have that approach, learner-centric approach, then we have results. And also, as I mentioned earlier, that we cannot train people regularly. Now in VUCA or post-COVID, they need to invest in themselves regularly. We just need to motivate them. We just need to make sure they are ready to invest in themselves and provide them with the resources. This should be our approach. Now, what happens is in most of the L&D programs or whatever my company does, in 80% of the organizations, it becomes a challenge for HR professional or L&D person who is coordinating to gather 20 people. He is calling HOD, sir, ek to bhej do, do to bhej do. 80% organization, it's like this. So unless we have that focus and we give that importance to L&D, so this is a normal what was happening even pre-COVID. But now after COVID, few interesting things have happened. We have innovated, L&D have innovated, and even employees have come to know that we can learn remotely. If actually we want to do something, it can be done online. And now post-COVID, I believe the blended approach that is coming out, that people who actually want to invest in themselves, that we do instructor-led or online training, whatever, and then online journeys, learning journeys. So now they are taking over. So there we can have leaderboards, we can see who is doing what. Even I can see that, okay, my colleagues, they are doing better than me. Right. So now everything, when it is palpable, it is visible. So that approach is changing. And now we see that a lot of good things should start happening.
Yeah. And Dr. Vats, how is technology playing a role today in terms of being the differentiator?
Yeah, technology enabler. I always say that technology is like 32 pieces of chess. Right. They can be made up of wood, brass, steel, gold, silver, whatever. But how you play is more important. So success rate of most of the famous LMS world out there is 4 to 5%. Because unless we gamify them, unless we gamify the things, they don't work. So how we involve people, that is more important. Similarly in L&D, when we have leaderboards, when we have competitions, in our experience, we have seen when we have competitions and leaderboards, then actually L&D works best. I may not get up earlier to go to the walk, but when I see 4 of my neighbors, they are going, then I'm more prone to go. So when I see my other colleagues are doing better than me, and I can see it live online, then that helps. So technology is helping in actually doing what we want to do. But yeah, how to play, that is more important.
Great, fantastic. Lopa, I want to come back to you. What you said at the start, because I know that you managed some solid HR talent management processes in your career, which was in sync with the business strategy of the organization. Having said that, and across geographies, across cultures, across cities, and across countries, having said that, how do you think L&D as a function or as an engine, whatever we want to call it, is a lethal weapon or an enabler for organizations to achieve business outcomes?
Okay. I think L&D was always poised, to be at the center where it could, impact business. I think the shift that has happened is more recently, organizations are taking the learning function seriously. I think till 10 years back, there was possibly resistance. There was possibly some cynicism that, is this required? Why is this required? I think now that, shift has happened. And I think in today's VUCA world, with so many things changing, L&D has really come to the forefront. And now is, I think, a great time for someone to be an L&D professional. Organizations, because they're going through so much change, I think constantly need to adapt. Okay, and adaptive capabilities in organizations are something that needs to be built. Now, that can be built only if, employees individually, collectively, and organization as a whole embark on a learning journey to develop this. It is not something that, can just happen overnight. And therefore, that whole learning platform and that whole learning structure, if I may call it that, plays a very, very important role. I think purely from a, talent perspective, if I look at it today, prospective candidates look at organizations that have a very robust learning framework almost as a benefit. So if candidates had to weigh between two organizations, one of which had a strong learning framework and the other hadn't, I think they would opt for the former. It's almost looked upon as a benefit. And in organizations where this is seamlessly woven into, their career path, it's something that they look forward to. So if that's the case, then I look at L&D playing a very important role from an employer branding proposition. It can be a very strong employer branding, proposition there. I think, like Sonal mentioned, employees know that, there are skill gaps. And with so much changing around us, I think all of us are aware that, we will need to reskill and upskill. The question is, if everyone is willing to, invest on this fund, or if all of us have a good understanding on what we need to do. So if the organization is taking care of that, providing us with the resources, enabling that environment, making it conducive, then I think employees are, very satisfied. And from that satisfaction arises a very high engagement rate. There's a direct impact, to the business. If you have employees that are better engaged, I think attrition definitely is, going to see a turnaround. So there's going to be reduced, turnover. And all of this have very clear, business correlation and business impacts. So I think L&D can play a very pivotal role. And like I said in the beginning, it is playing a pivotal role in organizations which have, which have understood the importance and which are sort of allowing the function to blossom. And that is why many organizations, L&D reports also directly to the CEO in many organizations, because that's the importance, that the function is given. So I clearly think it's a strong business enabler.
Beautiful. It's so heartening to hear that the importance of learning today. And look, does it just apply to Gen Z, their quest and thirst for learning, or are you talking across the board?
No, not at all. I think today the workforce from different generations have understood the need. I think, when we started off, it was okay, whatever happens on the job, we finished studying. So now there is no need to sort of study again. There is no need to do any reskilling. That was a concept when we started off. I think today there is a clear understanding that, on a regular basis, one needs to look at their skills, whether it's how much of that is applicable, how much of that is relevant, and what employees need to do to keep themselves relevant, either in their current role or wherever they are headed. So I think it's a hunger today across.
So the horse is ready to drink the water. Thank you, Lopa. Thank you so much. Any more thoughts to add on to what Lopa just said? Happy to.
I'd love to jump in and layer up. I don't know if that's okay. So absolutely. So the employees are ready. And then, we kind of agreed saying that they also know that there are skill gaps. Here, I just wanted to again add, an additional dimension. Now, yes, employees are aware there's skill gaps, but they're aware from their perspective. Now, what's happened in the last, especially 1 year, and I really don't want to stop with this 1 year. Of course, it's been a significant change maker for all of us, but I'm just saying that, generally speaking, we have to also, as an organization, clearly define as to what our expectations are from that individual. Now, many companies, and in fact, structurally, how we address that is through a competency framework with proficiencies defined, and to the level of defining behaviors, negative and positive, and saying, okay, this is what you do, we believe that you're there. But, so I think it's also important equally to articulate to the learner as to what has to be learned. And this doesn't just stop at, at the mid junior or in, or a frontline level. What I have realized that even at the leadership level, if you have to talk about leadership capability building, even the leaders at times are unsure as to what is it that the business is expecting out of me in the sense of competence. So all of us as leaders come with a certain set of education and experience. But what the organization believes are the critical success factors to my role, I think even leaders need that articulate. If I have to talk of leadership capability building, I will also define that. And then weave it into the competency framework as it has to be, and then tell them that, when I do an intervention or when there is a learning that's thrown at your, thrown at you through a various spectrum, model, technology, whatever that be, you need to know what to learn out of it. Now, so that skill gap has to be mutually understood and tightened. Just wanted to layer up.
Beautiful point on decision management for leaders that you just mentioned. That's very critical, and that is one big challenge for big and small firms across. Srees, I want to come back to you and during your opening remarks that I just got an insight in terms of a question that came to my mind, because you are handling a very complex ecosystem, the organization that you are leading. You have an x-axis and a y-axis, where x-axis is the number of entities, which I don't know how many, there are so many. And on the y-axis, you have number of countries that come directly under you. Now, with this complex ecosystem that you have in front, is there a connection between upskilling the workforce and positive employee engagement?
Good question, Dhananjay. So I would put it this way that, we are in a market where we have competition within ourselves. So just as a kind of a summary to our kind of business is, we have almost 21 companies in the country competing with each other. And we as an organization or as a team, we support these 21 to have a sustainable business model. So in such a circumstances, it is all about upskilling the team and really bringing the engagement level to a level that they feel that this entity is better than the competing entity, which is still part of the same group. So in such a complexity, you would find that, as HR, as an L&D professional, we would always try to impart the best of skills and knowledge to the team, and especially people whom we believe are the hypo, because this is the team which we would like to move from one organization to the other, between the competing organization. And therefore, the level of engagement in each of the entity really goes on a tangent, because there are a lot of times when these entities compete with each other to get the best of talent, and that comes from our talent pool. So upskilling certainly has a huge impact on the engagement level, and the growth which each individual gets in terms of being part of this upskilling journey really takes them to a different dimension in terms of their career. And this has helped us in this last 23 years that we have been existing in India. So it's complex, but it is exciting also. Yes, for sure.
It's very exciting internally. I'm sure your org structure would look very, very interesting when you have a look at the company org structure. Yeah.
True. Yeah.
So great. Thanks for enlightening us on making the whole organization future ready. And from a future ready perspective and aspect, Sonal, I just have a thought in mind. It's a very interesting situation now for, especially when we want a very different future in front of us, all of us, right? For the leaders to build capabilities, to have adaptive leaders. And if we place our hands on heart, do you think we are really ready for this challenge, or you feel, oh, it's all under control?
So like I was mentioning in my earlier layered up comment, well, see, the start point of being ready for a challenge is to acknowledge it. I think the brilliant point that wherever we are, we acknowledge it. We do realize there is definitely work that will again need to be done, especially this year. Because there was a time when we used to look at competency capability building. We used to have time horizons. Are you ready for the next 5 years? Are you ready for the next mission or statement that you have? With what these months threw at us was that you cannot anymore be time zoned. What you have to have as competencies and capability in your leaders are to be able to, how do you keep the agility consistently brewing? Because agility could be required in any dimension. It could be strategic, it could be people, it could be learning, it could be any form of agility is what you would always want your leaders to demonstrate or practice, or at least have, so that they can follow easily, if not always lead. So if you're asking me, like I said, are we ready for the challenge? Of course, we acknowledge it and we're working towards it. Now, again, the work that requires, again, I have a 2-point statement there. So one, of course, is, the clear definition of what the leaders should have or should now be, following in terms of the competency framework as to what should we be telling them, it will make them or continue to make them effective in the years to come.
Sure.
The second, where I think we underinvest, is the bridging competencies or bridging skills. I mean, what I'm trying to say is, for example, technology. Now, it's what makes, for example, when Rupa mentioned that what will ease the adoption of technology is when we also fill the gap of that learning. To presume that every leader is equally capable of managing technology and the change thereof, I think is one of the baseline errors that we make. The adoption becomes weaker because there is a fear built into how do I approach this, and when there is fear, there is lack of adoption, and worse off, lack of adoption is still to some extent for me a sort of a non-negative, non-positive behavior, but extremely negative behavior would be to then spread a word of mouth on how difficult that learning platform is. That kills the adoption rate completely. So addressing bridging competencies like how do you use a technology, how your blended learning curriculum is going to support various elements of your learning, defining the hows is also, to me, something that we need to address as the L&D function. So, 2 point, one, acknowledging the challenge, which I believe, speaking to various people at various network forums, we are defining what the competency should be. And then they are also addressing equally the bridging gaps, the fears of leaders as to how will they get the learning, out of this entire investment and network that you provide to them. If that answers them.
Oh, of course, you answered this. These are pearls of wisdom. And you mentioned a very important point about Lopa touching upon adoption of technology. Lopa, if I can come back to you. So when we say adoption of technology, it means go digital, digital mindset,
Right.
and all those important elements to be future ready from an organization and an individual point of view. And the business leaders are acknowledging that. That's the best part. That yes, this is being challenged today for businesses. But how, this is still very esoteric, right? How do we really prepare the workforce for this transition is a big question in front of us.
Yes. I think digital mindset, when we keep talking about it all the time, extends beyond, I think, our ability to use Facebook or Instagram or Twitter or whatever else, that all of us keep doing. At a deeper level, I think it's about, attitudinal and behavioral changes, both at an employee level as well as at an organization level, in terms of understanding, what technology can do for us at an individual level, at an organization level, really the power of, technology, and then to be able to harness it together. Having said that, in many organizations, I think investments in technology don't succeed or don't see the ROI as quickly as expected, because I think the people who need to embrace that technology are resistant. Exactly what Sonal sort of touched upon and mentioned, that people are either scared or they don't want to get into something new. And I think this is where leaders can play a very important role. One is, I think, the overall culture of the organization and how it looks at embracing any kind of change. Technology and digital is only one aspect of it. I think that in itself plays an important role. The other is, how is that digital mindset or technology being portrayed? Is it being portrayed as something that's just operational, or it's looked upon and communicated, and that communication cascaded as something that is more strategic? So helping people understand, I think, at some level, getting a buy-in even before, sort of venturing into it, talking enough about it,
Right.
Having forums where people can ask questions, breaking that fear, because the fear of that unknown is a big fear, and nobody wants to be out there also demonstrating that fear or letting others see it. So it's best to be, safe and not touch something like that. So I think communication in something like this becomes, very, very critical. Also, when is it that we are investing in what kind of technology? Because I think the right kind of investment at the right kind of time will yield a certain ROI, which is visible then even to the employees. So, there is a greater acceptability and a, better buy-in. So the question is, can we leverage the technology to, create a workplace that is more engaging, and at the same time, we get better efficiencies and returns. Also, I think we have to stop looking at us versus technology.
Yeah.
And move to a something more cohesive, saying that it's a part of the same ecosystem, and therefore we need to collaborate. And therefore, how do you create that boundaryless space, if I may put it like that, where you're utilizing technology, but you have a work environment that is actually more human centered, but is creative, and it's fostering that creativity. Technology in itself, I think, is a lot of machines, a lot of codes. Finally, I think it needs human ingenuity and creativity to kind of, bring it together. So I think we have to stop looking at it as us versus them. And as leaders, really talk about how it can benefit us, and have that constant communication, that it should be a chatter in the background, I think, ongoing till everybody accepts it. So, yeah.
So you're talking a lot about will, Lopa, creating that will and the awareness, which is very critical.
Because ultimately, it's the people who have to embrace it, right? Otherwise, it'll just be some fancy investment which will never see the light of day, or which will never sort of give the result for which it was meant in the first place. So really, I think getting the buy-in of the people, helping them to understand what the power of this technology is and how it can change lives for better, because I think right now there's also a lot of fear. Are people going to lose jobs? Is automation going to take over everything? So if robots come, what's going to happen to us? So I think it's important to have these conversations in organizations and really, if I may use the term, educate all of us that, okay, this is the impact, this is what's going to happen, but this is what we can do to mitigate it also.
Surely.
Not all jobs are going to get lost. And there's enough data to say that jobs are going to get created. It's just that we hear one side of the story. There's enough data to say that, what we've so far called soft skills are going to gain a lot of importance. But, how do we build those capabilities, within our teams? I think that's the conversation that we need to have.
When we're talking about will, interestingly, there is a question in the chat box which talks about her organization wanting to close the skill gap, and probably she's facing a challenge to close the skill gap. She wanted some thoughts from the panelists today. Dr. Vikas, can you take this question?
Yeah, sure, Dhananjay. And I'll start with what Lopamudra, she said, that this buy-in is most important thing. And based on that, we developed a tool that consists of 6 different factors which constitute buy-ins. And we have used successfully for L&D and also change management purposes. So we are able to find out the same intervention, why it impacts different people, different employees differently, and what we can do to make sure that whatever is going in the funnel, the maximum is coming out. So we were able to remove the bottleneck. So that buy-in tool, I think, is the first time in the world somebody has made. So that we developed. Yeah, for bridging the competency gap. So what I like to follow is integrated HR. So this is where all the processes of HR, nothing is working in silos. Everything is working to align the organization towards its vision, mission, and goals. So including the competencies. So it starts, of course, with the organization, vision, mission, and what are the critical success factors. From there, we arrive to the KPIs. From there, the competencies required to fulfill these KPIs, the assessment of competencies, and then L&D to bridge the competencies, and PMS and R&R to support the whole L&D or whatever gamification process we have. So that has to be an integrated approach. Till now, up to a few years back, what we saw was that there is an L&D department. Some of the major clients in auto sector, big clients we saw, there is L&D department doing a lot of training program. Then there is a CFT, which is doing competency-based trainings. And we never been able to understand why there are 2 parallel things happening. R&R has nothing to do with them. PMS working its own silos based on normal productivity bell curve. So everything is at its own. But now what we suggest is that it should be an integrated approach where all HR processes drive you, align you towards your organization, vision, and mission. So the competencies, when you want to bridge them, it is important that are these competencies new 1 or 5 or 10 years back you had those competencies. And once you are sure that they are validated, from validation, I mean that if these competencies are developed, they are bridged, then actually those will help you in taking your organization towards this vision and mission. Can I give an example here? So there was this person, one organization I was talking to, and they came up with the idea that they wanted me to design some leadership program for them because attrition is high. And the idea was if the leaders are good, the attrition will go down. So this is the idea. There is no validation in it. So that is important, that whenever we are bridging the gap, that we need to see whether there is a validation that whatever I want to do, that will take me in the direction I want to go, right? So once we are sure about that, then only we can bridge the competency gap. And as I stated, that it has to be integrated approach. All HR processes, not only L&D, should go in one direction.
Absolutely. It's deep yet very complex, and all of us will agree to that. I'm totally into this session. Panelist, I'll be very honest with you. I've forgotten my whirlwind, forgotten everything else, because I'm just trying to make my notes and see how I can apply to make myself future ready. The only challenge that we have today is paucity of time. Sorry, we started a little bit late. We have overshot on time now. I wish we had more time to discuss some very, very pertinent and relevant things around talent, which is going to be one single differentiator for any organization in the coming times. I'll be very honest with you. We need to rethink our strategies when we talk about the Rethink HR event today to build a glorious future. I thank all the panelists once again, Dr. Vikas, Srees, Sonal, Lopa, and Dr. Radhakrishna who couldn't make it today. Thank you for being with us here today. It was an absolute pleasure. It was an absolute pleasure for all the esteemed delegates to have a lot of takeaways when they go back to their workplace. We can't thank you enough. Take care and God bless, and till we meet again. Thank you, Isha.